From HanselMinutes.com, it's Hansel Minutes, a weekly discussion with web developer and technologist Scott Hanselman. This is Lawrence Ryan announcing show number 226, recorded live Monday, August 9th, 2010. Support for Hansel Minutes is provided by Telerik RAD Controls, the most comprehensive suite of components for Windows Forms and ASP.NET web applications. Online at www.telerik.com. In this episode, Scott talks about the Ultimate Developer PC 2.0 with Pete Brown.
Hi, this is Scott Hanselman. This is another episode of Hansel Minutes. We've got Pete Brown on the phone. Pete and I have been trying to build God's own computer and failed. I think that God has a much nicer computer than we do. But how are you, Pete?
I'm good. How are you, Scott?
Not too bad, not too bad. I've been running this new machine, the new Ultimate Developer PC 2.0, for, what is it now? A couple weeks?
Yeah, it's been, a week or two at least.
Yeah. It is really quite lovely. I can definitely say
I haven't heard fire engines
go
going to your house or anything, so it sounds like it's working.
Yeah. I haven't had any blue screens. I don't have to think about it. It is extremely fast. Just in the last week, I've, like builds, I don't even think about builds. No project I'm working on is massive enough for this thing to even blink at. So every time I hit Control-Shift-B, it's 5 seconds tops. Or less, mostly less. And for encoding videos and stuff, it's insane. I had a video recently that was going to take something like 13 hours on my laptop and ended up taking like, I don't know, it was like 20 or 30 minutes. It was a big HD video I had. Had no trouble at all. So from a raw processor power, I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled. What is the status of your machine?
Mine is still sitting here on my desk in a kind of a benchtop configuration. So I'm still playing around with tweaking some of the things and getting ready to put the water cooling in it. But I did the live build of it and tested it out and installed Windows like 100 times, which happens in, like 9 minutes or something crazy like that.
My goodness. This is
it's not in like daily use
yet,
this?
Hang on a second. We're gonna keep this in the show, I think, because this is just how wonderful a Hanselman podcast is. Let me see here. Is there a man in my backyard mowing the lawn? Of course there is. Is there a dog barking next door? Of course there is.
Nice.
I'm going to hang on 1 second, and I'm just going to grab my portable audio booth, and I'm going to just put it in front of me here to try to change the audio, but keep it rolling. Hang on 1 second. Alrighty. So now I'm sequestered in my tiny audio booth.
This is like a real booth.
What's that?
This is like you have like the TARDIS in your room or something? What is this audio booth?
It is a probably a 2 foot by 2 foot hinged audio material thing. It looks like a giant book, like a giant black book. It's got two 2 foot by 2 foot audio material things with a hinge in the middle, and you put it in front of yourself in a failed attempt to make the background noise go away. Hopefully, as I'm laughing here and I hear the dog and the lawnmower in the background, and no one is hearing that. It's probably just in my head.
Yeah, I think it is in your head because I don't hear it at all.
So this is great, and that would be success. And Carl Franklin sent me this. And actually, when we originally started the show, Carl wanted me to have a full-on TARDIS, and that's TARDIS for those of you who are using Wikipedia to find out what a TARDIS is. Basically, a phone booth that would sit in my garage that I would do all my recording via.
But that you could actually have your house or your office in the TARDIS because there's so much more room in there anyway.
I would have no problem with that.
Yeah, I think that would be good.
All right, so I've been using my machine for 2 weeks, and I'm having no problem with it. So let's walk through this. The original goal, of course, was to get a 7.9, the highest theoretical score available on the Windows Experience Index. But a lot of people thought that this was a silly goal. And do you think it is a silly goal?
No, I think it's worth pursuing. It's silly only if you have to drop like another $1,000 on it to try and meet it.
The goal was to make the Ultimate Developer PC, but the 7.9 I would think was secondary. I mean, like if we could do it, we could do it. That'd be great. But if not, that's fine too.
Yep. Yep.
So what, in your mind, what's different from the Ultimate Developer PC? Because a number of people felt that they were kind of offended that I was just building the Ultimate Gamer PC. And I seriously don't use this thing to game.
Right. And the biggest thing was really the video. Like, what did you end up with for a WEI on video?
7.8.
7.8, right?
And people felt that was over the top, like totally not necessary.
Right. To get that other 0.1, I think you would have had to have gone up an entire level of card, like double the price of your card or at least another couple $100 or something like that.
Yeah.
And that seems totally not worth it to me.
And honestly, I mean, let's just go through the list, but I'll tell you what I regret and what I don't, because I think that's really what's important about this, is to provide guidance to people who may agree or disagree with our choices and what would be right for them. And each of our machines ended up costing about $3,000.
Yep.
So processor, what did we get?
Processor, it was, I don't have mine up in front of me, but it was like a 7.8, I believe, right?
No, but like what processor did we buy? It was the Intel Extreme Edition i7.
Yeah, it was the 980X. Right, 980X. Which is like a $1,000 6-core 3.3 gigahertz processor.
Right. And it is the flagship desktop processor you can get from Intel.
Right. And Intel, it's not the only 6-core now. Intel has one where they dropped the price like $100. But that $100, the difference there is the other processor is quite a bit slower. I think it was just straight 3 and doesn't have all the unlock stuff you'd want to do for overclocking. So it's kind of, it's still, that's if you want 6-core, it's still worth the extra 100.
Yeah. This is known as an overclocker's dream. Now we're not talking about getting, there's a guy yesterday who calculated pi to 1 trillion digits or something using, an overclocked machine. I think you and I liked the idea of overclocking in the sense of I can get some free speed. Right? Exactly. You can effectively overclock this 3.4 or 3.33 gigahertz processor to 4 gigahertz using air cooling and basically giving yourself a 20 to 30% speed increase for free.
Right.
And we like that.
If you get a top of the line Intel processor and just run it at stock, you're just throwing money out the window. I mean, the whole point of those processors is to let you get some additional speed out of that.
And it's free speed, effectively.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, have you been able to overclock yours at all?
So I did just on the bench. I went up to 4.1 on air, just using the stock cooler, which is pretty impressive. That's almost a full gigahertz difference there just on stock cooling. And it was good temperatures. Yeah.
That's pretty slick.
Yeah. Now it is open on my bench and I had a big fan blowing at it. So once I go and shove it in a case, I'm not sure how high it could go on air. But I'm really hoping to get it up a bit higher, at least 4 or 5 using the water cooling stuff. And so the water cooling is a bit of a fun project for me, but still ultimately it's about how much stable free speed can I get out of this processor.
Right. And this is really important because it's important for the audience to know that we're not overclocking experts. We're not hardware wonks. We're developers. And you chose water cooling. I said that's too much hassle. I'm not even overclocking that much just because for me, if this thing blue screens once, I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust it again.
Right. That blue screening is a complete fail on overclocking. We
but
have
blue
to have
screening
a stable
in everyday
machine,
life is so emotionally, I just got choked up there. It's so emotionally scary that like if a machine blue screens, I mean, think about that, right? It's just like your machine is cheating on you.
Exactly.
How can I ever forgive it?
It is. It is a very depressing experience.
It is incredibly depressing. I mean, this machine has been rock solid stable, and I am reticent to give up any kind of stability. If I discover that it's going to be great in everyday life and it works fine for email, but then I decide to go and, squish a DVD and it blue screens, then I'll be very sad. I realize that I can run stability tools like Prime 95 and things for, overnight to make sure the thing is stable, but
exactly.
I don't mind free speed, but I'm going to lean more towards stability. It's still pretty fast.
Now, I'll tell you, when I was doing the research for the cooling on this, I was looking at all the crazy things people were doing with this processor. And there are folks that build like shrouds around the processor and just dump in coolant and get this thing up to like almost 6 gigahertz. Or some of them have old air conditioners that they've got hooked up to it. Like just, beat up old air conditioners that they've gutted and ran pipes directly onto the processor. But these are guys that are, driving this, get a blue screen, cool, dial it back a little bit. And I don't think that's what you or I are looking for.
No, I mean, this is the same kind of personality that is trying to get an extra horsepower out of an old engine or whatever. Right? And I'm driving a Prius in neutral. So definitely we're not overclockers. So rest assured, most people could probably get away with one processor down or two processors down from this spot.
Yeah, a really good 4-core will do well for most folks.
Yeah, definitely. Now, memory was a confusing one to me because we heard in the original WEI podcast that there was some tricks around memory, and then at some point when you got a fast enough processor, the memory score didn't really matter. But I don't quite understand memory. I guess I have 1333 memory.
Right.
1,333 gigahertz. Or megahertz, rather. You got faster memory, and I'm not sure. Did I make a mistake?
So I got the 1600, which just in the research I did, if you want to overclock quite a bit, you typically need something that's a step above the 1333. But I don't think what you got will be a problem because you can usually go a little bit higher. The memory you got is a pretty good quality memory. It's not just the stuff from the loose bin down at the computer store, right? So I think you should be able to overclock that a little bit, but you won't be able to go quite as high. You don't have as much headroom.
So does that mean that my initial failures at overclocking compared to your no problem getting to 4 gigahertz on air are related to possibly my cheap memory?
It's possible. It's so hard to tell exactly what the kind of what the weakest link in the system is. I mean, maybe the people who do this constantly can immediately say, yeah, that's obviously memory.
Right.
But when I look at it, there's nothing that says, hey, your memory is frying here, or it's not keeping up, without doing individual tests on each component.
I paid $374 for OCZ memory and I got a 12 gig kit. Apparently these motherboards really like their memory to all come from one place.
Yeah.
They can spot like the one man out, so you can't buy 8 gigs and then add another 4 gigs later on. They really like everyone to be from the same family,
at least when you're in the same channel, especially. So like for mine I got 2 6 gig kits from the same manufacturer.
Mm-hmm.
Like a single 12 gig kit would definitely be better. I mean, you'd probably have a little bit more headroom, but the 2 6 from the same manufacturer is not bad either, as long as you have each set in its own channel. So the 3 sticks that I got together as one set are going to be one channel on the board, and the other 3 that I got will be the second channel.
And you filled up your motherboard. And this is an interesting thing because both of us bought the Gigabyte. That's the brand name, Gigabyte, UD9 motherboard, which is considered a big, overpriced, giant flagship motherboard, but it has everything in the kitchen sink. And it's interesting because it has 6 memory slots.
Yep.
So you filled yours up.
Right. I mean, you can theoretically go to, or not even theoretically, you can practically go to 24 gig on this.
Not practically. I got a 12 gig kit. So 3 of my slots are 4s, and then I've got room for another 12 gigs to get up to 24.
Exactly. And 24 gigs is pretty awesome. But I was interested in getting some speed out of this, and I really felt like I could do 12 gigs on this first build and be happy with it. And then when I wanted to go to 24 gigs later, I was probably going to be better off buying a 24 gig kit. That's all in one, right?
Does that exist?
For the same reasons you're talking about. But they're not quite out yet, right? The really good 24 gig kits are a couple months out at least. Okay. So I figured for the first time ever, I would just fill all the slots on my motherboard. I've never done that before.
Well, one of the things that I learned during this build, because we did the build in public and we were on Ustream. You can go up to our blogs and we video streamed the building, which is geeky in itself, was that apparently this Intel Nehalem chipset, the chipset that is on the motherboard that, is known for not liking 12 gigs of RAM. And I've had some trouble with my box where I'll boot once and it'll say 8 gigs and I'll boot again and it'll be 12. And
Interesting.
It's about recognizing that memory. And there's some kind of and I thought is it the Gigabyte motherboard or is it this Nehalem chipset? And apparently this is a known thing. And the other thing that's known is that the more memory you have, the harder it is to overclock successfully. And the real hardcore overclockers will just pull all the memory out and they'll have like a gig or 2 gigs, and then they'll overclock. So
Right.
maybe my problems are that I'm running 12 gigs of this cheaper memory. This is the part of the show where I mock you. Well, actually, Telerik mocks us. Your applications that you're testing dependent on external systems over which you have no control. Maybe you're being slowed down by those systems, their lack of availability, responsiveness. You want to do TDD right? Our friends at Telerik help you solve some of those problems with their newest mocking tool, Just Mock. It'll let you do fast, simple, controlled unit tests independent of external resources like databases, web services, proprietary code. Unlike some mocking tools, Just Mock works with non-virtual methods, sealed classes, static methods, giving you complete control of your code. You can get more details. You can download Just Mock at Telerik.com/JustMock. And don't forget to thank Telerik for supporting Hansel Minutes on their Facebook fan page, Facebook.com/Telerik. Thanks a lot.
Now, the 12 gig problem that you were mentioning, I remember either you telling me or I was looking it up that it's very sensitive to the voltage. So if you go a little low, you won't get 12 gigs. If you go a little high, you won't get 12 gigs. But if you hit the sweet spot, it'll recognize 12.
Well, and this
which is
gets
ridiculous,
to the whole point.
Yeah.
Like, is that worth the hassle? Right? If I buy a Dell, am I going to have this issue?
Right. Yeah, and the Dells will not allow you to overclock, so they'll have all that stuff just dialed in, right? So It's whatever your tolerance is for that.
Well, whatever your tolerance is for tinkering, isn't it? I mean, this is the
Exactly.
thing, right? I went down to the local Best Buy and I said, what's the best computer in this entire place? Which is always a cool thing. I recommend that everyone try that. Just walk in like you're like packing big cash and just say, what's the best computer here? And it turned out that the one that was there is a quad core, but it maxes out at 5.7 because Best Buy, our local computer store here, doesn't have any machines with SSDs. But it's basically getting like 7.1, 7.2, 7.3, 7.3, 5.9.
Mm-hmm.
And, but it's still, I mean, I clicked around. It's ridiculously fast. You know, once you're looking at a 7 class machine, it's fast. So for $1,000, that's $1,000, $1,100 machine. That's a beautiful thing.
Wow.
Oh yeah. But you can't, you know, it's all one piece. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's some kind of Dell that's all one piece, and it's not something that where you're going to be able to swap something out later and bring new life to it. One of the things that I liked about the last Ultimate Developer PC is that twice in the last 3 years, I have been able to give it new life with a new video card or new memory or a new hard drive.
Yep. And I think even with that Dell PC, I mean, that sounds like it would be a pretty good dev box if you can get an SSD, and be able to crack it open and not have a little sticker on there that says warranty void if, you replace a drive, right?
Right. Exactly. And actually, speaking of drives, so some of the things that were interesting in the building of this machine was I put it together, and I needed to remember to get the latest BIOS for the motherboard. So I had to flash the BIOS. The hard drive is an SSD. It's a Crucial S300. S300 or C300?
C300.
C300, 256 gig SSD. I had to flash that as well. There's firmware on the SSD, so that was interesting. And that involved basically burning an ISO disk, booting off of it, and then having it boot into this Linux disk, and then find the drive and then flash it. And it's important because every time you flash the firmware on your SSD, you're going to lose all your data. So you get that.
I was lucky in that mine already came with, I'll tell you how new this stuff is, firmware revision 2, which is the latest.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't have to go through that whole flashing process.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't have that. I actually did have to flash mine. Interesting. But also there's different SATA plugs on the motherboard. There's SATA 2 and SATA 3. There's like
100 of them on this board.
Yeah. This particular motherboard has an Intel SATA section and a Marvel section. So I had to decide which one of those to plug it into, because it appeared that the SSD was maxing out the Intel side.
There was some really weird stuff going on there where, the Marvell controller, which is the 6 gigabit controller on the board, if you installed the driver from Marvell, you would end up with a 5 something on WEI. It like knocked the throughput in half. But if you were able to just use the Microsoft driver and you didn't ever download the Marvell driver, then you would get a 7.9.
Yeah,
so
I saw that
was
as well.
reinstalling a couple times, trying that out and trying to figure out exactly where that step is, where that's happening.
And also, just to make sure that people who are listening don't think that we're only looking at the WEI, that was kind of our broad strokes. We were also looking at different disk benchmarks. I was noticing that the throughput on my SSD, when using the wrong drivers or plugged into an inappropriate port, would give me things like 200 or 250 megabytes a second. But when plugged into the SATA 3 port with the correct drivers, I was getting 320 megabytes a second.
Right.
Which is significant, shall we say.
Yep.
And then when I put this thing together...
And on the 6 gigabit port, on the 6 gigabit port with the right drivers, it was getting even a little bit better than that.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah, and this is the stuff, you can plug it in and it will just work. And that's the thing that's the trickiest. You can just plug this into any old port, not think about it, and it'll just work fine. But if you're willing to put a little bit of work into it, you'll realize that there's actually performance there that you may be missing out on.
An important part of that is what mode you're running the drives in, or the ports. Remember, you had to decide between IDE or what's it, ACHI?
AHCI?
Yeah. And if you didn't have it in that ACHI mode, you wouldn't get trim commands and the other stuff that the SSD can support.
Mm-hmm.
And by default, it was just IDE mode. I was very disappointed with a lot of the default settings in the BIOS for this board. Yeah,
they're very conservative. They actually recommend that you go right into the BIOS and select optimized. They're optimized are kind of what they think of as the defaults. The defaults are not even anything, really.
Yep.
And actually, another thing, speaking of slots and things, you turned me on to the fact that while these have many PCI 16X slots, some of them share the same bus. So there's like slots 1, 3, and 5 are on one bus, and 2, 4, and 6 on another. And I didn't realize that I was actually cutting the speed of my video in half by plugging the cards into the wrong slots.
Right.
Which is bizarre.
It's crazy.
How could you
these
possibly
enthusiast
know that?
boards are not very forgiving.
No.
They really expect you to have cracked open the manual and kind of done a little research before you start plugging stuff in.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas just all the motherboards I've bought in the past, I take it out of the box, I plug the stuff in, put it in the machine, and I'm done.
Well, that's the funny thing, right? Someone was saying in the comments that they said that it seemed like it was a bunch of SQL guys trying to design a user interface. It was like, this is ridiculous. What are you guys doing? You're useless. And I was like, yeah, man, if we were building a 486 DX, I could rock this build. I would be your guy. But I'm catching up on this stuff. The last time I did this build was 3 years ago with Jeff Atwood, and he was schooling me on all the new slots and this and that that is available. This is the first build I've done alone in a while. If you go around and read all the documents, if you're detail oriented, you'll be fine. But if you just slap this together like a 486, it'll work, but you'll probably have a machine that's half as fast as it could be, just for want of putting the wrong slot, the wrong card in the wrong slot, or the wrong cord in the wrong whatever. That didn't quite come out how I imagined it in my head. But point is, though, you plug the hard drive into a SATA 2 and two video cards that are supposed to be running multiple monitors into the slot that's on the same bus, and you just there's bandwidth there you're wasting. So I ended up moving a video card over, and everything became snappier.
Nice.
Yeah, nice. Definitely. And actually, the video card, that's the one thing I regret. Everyone insisted I should buy an ATI, and I just have religious issues with ATI. I used to be a hardcore ATI guy, literally like hardcore from like 1989, 1990. Like I had the first ATI, I think it was called an 8914/A. It was the first ATI card that would run 1024. I ran it on like a 13-inch monitor.
Yeah.
And then somewhere in the early 2000s or mid 2000s, my ATI experience went south, and I started blue screening. And I just gave up on ATI, and I went NVIDIA, and I've been happy ever since. But I made the mistake of going with my gut rather than going with Tom's Hardware and AnonTech and the people in the comments. And I bought an GTX 470. And this card is wonderful in the sense that it's unbelievably fast. but it is so freaking hot that I'm having to like keep the window open. I think I may have to sell the card. It's just too hot.
So why is it so hot?
It's 90 Celsius.
Wow.
And then you actually figured out why it was 90 Celsius, which is even more disturbing. That you want to talk about the multiple monitor thing?
Yes. So that was really crazy. So you just the act of plugging that second monitor into your card, it added like another 50 degrees or 40 degrees Celsius or something like that to the board temperature, which was insane, right? I don't remember if it was the memory or the GPU, but
it's the clock speed.
Just having a second monitor was it.
Yeah. Apparently the deal is that there's a bug in this particular, it's called the Fermi, Fermi chipset, and the Fermi chipset has a flicker issue when you plug in two monitors at low clock speeds. So the way they get rid of the flicker is they double the clock speed, and that doubles the heat. And it's not really literally double, but it's a difference between about 50 to 53 Celsius on one monitor. And it literally, I just plug in the other cable, and it goes up 70, 80, 90, depending on how hard the load is. But it's enough to raise the temperature in the room, 5, 10 degrees.
And that's just insane. I don't get how that particular problem truthfully has shaken my faith in NVIDIA, because I don't know how you produce a board like that.
Yeah, it's pretty horrific. Now the thing is that they're saying that the Fermi GTX 460 is a great card and a great balance of power and heat, and I've seen a number of articles, including one that had the headline, "The Fermi We've Been Waiting For." But because I've got three monitors, everyone's saying that I should have just bought the ATI iFinity. I would be able to run all three monitors happily. And what I ended up doing, because I have a 30-inch monitor and then two 24s, is running the main 30 on the new card, and then the other two on the GTX 275 that I had lying around. So honestly, for what I'm doing, the 470 is ridiculous. It's totally overkill, and I could have saved $150.
Right.
I think any $200 or $250 more expensive than usual, but not really expensive, card would be fine for a developer. And the GTX 275 would have been just fine. And that's running my two secondary monitors anyway.
Right. And you're not going to get a 7.9, but it's a 7.9 is a gaming machine.
Again, that wasn't the point. The point was monitors. And in my last developer PC, I ran two GTX 275s, and I actually lowered the power by getting a specific brand. I think it was called Verto, VERTO. That is it's an air-cooled NVIDIA. So they modify the board that they get from NVIDIA. They put a giant heat sink on it, and they have no fan. So it's an incredibly quiet board. And this is a great board. Top-of-the-line board 3 years ago. Very inexpensive board. It's like $100, $150 board now. And it runs these machines. It runs these 24-inch monitors just fine. So to those of you, including anonymous poster who eventually told me his name was David, in the comments, I was wrong. Please forgive me. Don't buy the GTX 470. Now that said, stepping aside from the I don't play games, I did install Steam, and I did play Counter-Strike at 2,560 by 1,000 whatever freaking resolution that this 30-inch monitor runs, and I did it at 90 frames a second.
Wow.
So, that said, don't buy this board because it's overkill.
Hey, so I actually got an ATI card for my build. I bowed to the pressure from the community, even though I had the same experience that you did back in the 2000s, right, with the early Radeons.
Right.
And it does get a lower score, and it's not as good of a board performance-wise as yours is, but it'll support 3 displays, and it just does a great job otherwise.
Is it hot?
No, it's actually a really cool board. It's a Sapphire Radeon, and they don't use the reference layout. They have their own layout with their custom cooling solution on here, so it runs something like 10 degrees Celsius cooler than the stock boards do. And it comes overclocked by default.
Yeah, and this is another thing to watch out for, is that these boards, these high-end equipment that you buy, and we bought from Newegg, and I think you bought some stuff from a local shop, people don't like you returning these. Back in the
Yes.
day, you could like buy something like this at a local warehouse or computer store, effectively renting it, try it out, and then take it back. Not anymore. I'm stuck with this board. Newegg will swap it for another board, but this particular board, they don't allow refunds on.
Yeah. And they'll only swap it for the same thing, I think, right?
Yep. So watch out. If you're gonna do something like this, don't be like me.
Right.
And do your research and make sure that you can return something. And actually, speaking of returning things, one thing that Newegg did return nicely was my power supply. I was unable to get the board to boot up for the first 2 days. I got a very strange error message on the LED. There's a little red LED display with two 8-digit segmented LEDs on the motherboard on the Gigabyte, and it's meant to help for overclocking. It's supposed to tell you why this isn't working. So you boot up and your monitor doesn't work, and maybe you don't have a video card, and it says 2F, and you go and say, oh, 2F, there's too much voltage to the memory or whatever. And I was getting 8.8. And if you search around on the web for Gigabyte, UD9, and 8.8, people think that it's code 8B, which I think is silly to think that, because they would have just used a lowercase b.
Right.
But they're convinced that it's a code. It's a code. So here's the news
secret
flash.
Message.
8.8 is not a code. It is actually the all of the segments on the segmented display lighting up. So it hasn't even gotten to the part where it outputs an actual letter and a number. It does, it's just literally just lighting up and going 8.8 because everything's lit up. It's a power supply problem. It's not getting the voltage that it needs, and it just won't go beyond that. And I was finding out of 10 boots, I could get it to boot once. And then I went over and I returned my Silverstone power supply. I picked up an Antec, and it worked instantly and every time.
Good to know.
Very, very persnickety motherboard. And if you search around, people are having all sorts of problems with that. And it's all power related. Some of these power supplies just don't put out consistent power, even though they were higher in power supplies. And Newegg fortunately took that power supply back and returned it with a small restocking fee.
Good. Yeah, I ended up with a Corsair power supply because I've had good luck with them in the past, and that seems to have done pretty well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you said you were able to install Windows how quickly?
I can do Windows. So I had a really slow USB stick that I was using to boot directly from and install Windows, and even with that, it was under 10 minutes. So I actually ordered a replacement USB stick that is supposed to be just wicked fast, and I'm just going to try it again and see if I can do like a 7-minute Windows 7 install. And that's including typing in the user ID, picking your time zone, the whole deal. So
you're saying from completely dead, naked machine, no file system, to working desktop in 10 minutes.
Yes.
Yeah,
and that was just amazing.
That is nice. Are you happy with the experience?
Yeah, I mean, and so what that has let me do this time that I've never done before is I keep rebuilding the machine till I get to the optimal configuration, because if you tinker with some things in the BIOS, it sets stuff up in Windows that are really hard to change later on. So I'm like, 10 minutes to reinstall. I'll just go and play around the BIOS and learn some more and reinstall it, and it's not painful at all.
That is an interesting perspective. Yeah. I'm used to putting machines together, closing the box up, and putting the box under my desk. But the open bench build, which is what the pros do, is really a nice way to do it. And that's what I ended up doing. I just put the thing on a big wooden door, and it was sitting out in my garage with a big wooden door, and changed things and moved cords around, and then didn't actually button the thing up. Actually, honestly, I took the side off. I'm still moving things around. It's not 100% buttoned up, even 2 weeks in. But it does feel a lot more flexible. Being able to do
I think
that.
So. Hey, during your build, did you do anything dumb?
Well, other than building it on carpet originally, that was kind of stupid.
Oh, okay.
I lost a screw once. Almost shorted the whole thing out. Installed Windows using IDE mode, and then had to reinstall an ACHI. What else did I do? A couple of stupid things like that. What did you do?
So my dumb thing that I did on here is, I got the thermal grease and stuff on the CPU, and then I put the heatsink down, got it all tightened up, and thought, I missed a step in here. And so I asked, and nobody else had picked it up that was watching at the time, but I unscrewed the whole, the heatsink, pulled it all off, and it still had the little plastic protective film on the bottom of the heatsink. So that was my dumb mistake for the time. I forgot to remove that plastic cover off there. So I had to clean up the CPU, get rid of all the grease, take the sticker off, and do it all over again.
Cool. Well, I posted 3 different posts on my blog about the experience, and I know you're continuing your series on the Ultimate Developer PC. I've also got some interesting benchmarks as I built some larger projects like Nhibernate, and I'm effectively getting 2x performance for my medium-sized project builds over my previous one, and I'm feeling pretty good about it. I'm a little sad about the video card, but maybe I'll get someone to buy it from me on Craigslist, and I won't lose too much money.
Yep. But was it fun, Scott?
Yeah, it was fun. It was the most fun I had since I built the arcade. Now I got to think about what else I want to build. I need to build a Surface. I feel like I need a big ass table. So maybe I'll do that next. Maybe I'll use the old Ultimate Developer PC to power the big ass table. Oh.
That might be good. That might be good.
Now I got to go. All right, I got to go build this now.
Great.
Thanks, Pete.
Thank you, Scott.
This has been another episode of Hansel Minutes. We'll see you again next week.